first thing we see when Paul opens up Romans 1 and speaks about the gospel is in Romans 1:6, and he says, it is the power of God to salvation. So what is the gospel to Paul? As far as Paul is concerned, and listen, this is not just Paul talking. Paul is saying, I want to give you the revelation of God concerning the gospel. The gospel is the power. Now, you've got to process that in your mind, particularly if you come from the Christian pedigree of Pentecostalism, or you're a charismatic person, and we all are. We are charismatics, we are Pentecostal. What does that mean? A question, put it down. What does Pentecostal mean? We'll answer some other time. And we believe in a few things based on the Bible. Chances are that when the expression, the power of God is used, we don't immediately connect it with the gospel. Power of God for very many people is miracles, signs, and wonders. And yes, we could say that. But when Paul refers to the power of God, almost always he's not thinking signs and wonders. For example, in this verse, Paul says the gospel is the power of God to salvation. He doesn't say the gospel has the power, or he doesn't say the gospel leads to the power. He says the gospel is the power. So I've got to come to understand and say to myself, the gospel is the power. The gospel is the power. If I am being exposed to the gospel, I am being exposed to the power. If I am hearing the gospel, I am hearing the power. If somebody is teaching the gospel, he's communicating the power, because the gospel is the power. It's the power. What does power mean? Well, to put it very simply, power is the capacity to get something done. Power is what you need to get the job done. Power is the sum total of what a person needs to get anything done. So in God's eyes, if you were to ask him, what do you need, God? Not that God has any need. I better stop and say that before I go on. One of the essential things we learn about in the Christian faith, about the nature of God, is that God does not have any needs. Any needs. God doesn't need anything. Need, N-E-double, sorry, I beg your pardon, it's later, we're all hungry, aren't we? Okay. N-double-E-D. The word need is a creature word. Need is a word that creatures use. It's a word that is consistent with the creature. Every creature or creation has a need or is needy of something. God, according to Acts 17, has no need. But yet you hear many Christians relate to God, speak about God, talk about God, sing about God as though God has a need. God has no need. It is absolutely wrong. If there's a stronger word for wrong, I would like to use it. But if you've associated need with God, you haven't seen the biblical God as you ought to see God. I mean, for example, some might be able to relate to this kind of expression when people talk about our praise and our worship, and we say it like God needs that for food. That's a very silly statement. Very, people say things like, as you praise God, you eat spaghetti, God eats praise. God, and God doesn't. That's a picture of a need. God needs nothing. In fact, people sometimes say this, that in Genesis, why did God create man? For example, I've heard answers like this: because God needs fellowship. Ever heard that? Why did God create man? Because he needed fellowship. As soon as you mention need, you're not talking about God. God has no need. But just for the sake of the discussion, if you were to go to God and say, God, you need to get something done, what would you need to get the thing done? God thinks gospel, because the gospel is the power of God to salvation, to everyone that believes. We'll expand on this as we go into sessions. But one thing we need to understand from the Bible is that the gospel is the power. 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 The gospel is the power of God to salvation to everyone that believes, to the Jew first and to the Greek.